The automotive industry is set for a revolution that will disrupt and reshape global business, threatening the survival of every organization. To make sure you survive and win in the new automotive game, Automotive Growth Expert Roberto Dal Corso has interviewed global experts from the automotive industry to identify the changes and the impacts that are coming to keep you ahead of the curve.
Sanjay, welcome so much to the leading disruptive automotive trends and having a look at the future of where the aftermarket is really going. I mean, we've known each other since I think probably 2010.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so it's been a while, and really I do thank you for taking your time out, because you're sitting in Australia on a Friday evening and you're giving up some of your valuable weekend time.
You're welcome, no problem.
Yes, and no, really thank you. But I mean, your history in the automotive goes back, years before I met you in 2010. I mean, I think you started off in 2002 in the automotive industry, if I'm not mistaken. Can you just take us through and give us some background to that?
I have been in the automotive industry since 1991, actually.
Oh, wow, okay. I didn't realize that.
Started my life as a product manager for passenger cars in the Middle East, in a city called Muscat in Sultanate of Oman.
Yeah.
So I spent 10 years in that market. Essentially, I was a product manager for the Daewoo franchise of vehicles, and there was the sole distributor of Daewoo in that country. So had a good time over there, and then migrated to Australia in 2001, and started selling passenger cars initially for 4 years, and then afterwards I joined ZF Australia as a product manager for spare parts. Before this, I was not in spare parts, but then ZF is where I started my spare parts career in 2005.
Wow. Okay. No, I didn't realize it went so far back. So then just a question. If you have, what is your story? How did you get into the automotive industry? Because, I don't know, as kids, either we like cars, but I don't think you dream of going into the automotive industry as a profession.
It happened by accident, I would think, because originally I am qualified as an electronics engineer. And I also worked maintaining computers for a while, and then afterwards did my marketing. And then after I finished my MBA marketing, this opportunity to go overseas to the Middle East from India came up. I just went in for the interview, and they said, yes, come and join us. So yeah, and I went because it was a good paid, tax-free location. Company accommodation, etc., etc. So this was good sort of a thing. Plus, international market, and I always wanted to go overseas, so that's where I started. 2001, and then initially got into selling cars for 4 years, and then joined ZF Australia.
Okay.
In spare parts.
Oh, that's very interesting. And I mean, your driving factors and what's made you successful over the years, because you've continuously grown, bigger companies, more importance, and become a leading expert in Australia. Well, what's been the drivers behind that?
I suppose my ability to take a comprehensive look of any situation and understand how everything interacts. The market situation, the competitors, your product positioning, the company's strengths, the customer's requirements, the distribution's requirements. In general, overall, the power equation of the entire the market as compared to where your company stands.
Yeah. And I mean, over the time, you must have seen a lot of changes. So what are the current disruptive trends that you see, in Australia, New Zealand, in your part of the world?
The trend is very clearly cutting out the middleman. Across the market, let me step back. 5-6 years back, or maybe 8-10 years back, the distribution channel, or the value chain as people call it, was pretty long. So you had an importer distributor, and then you had a dealer or like a wholesaler, and then a wholesaler sold it to a retailer, and then the retailer sold it to the workshop.
Yeah.
Now what's happening is, in many instances, the wholesaler is becoming an importer himself.
Okay.
Or even the dealer is becoming an importer himself. So the value chain is shrinking a lot. So there is a lot of small players in the market now appearing quite strong, because in the earlier days there wasn't the infrastructure available to them, or the soft power which was available in terms of access to information, access to electronic cataloging, or access to international catalogs was not there. Now almost everybody has these things at their fingertips. So anybody with an internet connection and some money in the bank can become an importer distributor himself. And if he is able to find a niche for himself, and there is a lot of niches in the market in Australia, because it's an extremely complex business, and people are able to do that. So across the board, there is a pretty big shrinkage of the value chain.
Okay. And I mean, obviously that's creating a lot of impacts, but again, it's been driven by possibly a couple of the other trends, because you mentioned internet, so that's really digitalization coming into it. You've mentioned, anyone can become an importer / distributor. So you've also got a lot of consolidation within, the middle of the value chain.
Yes, that's right. And majority of this distribution has been, on one hand, people do not want to hold too much inventory. On the other hand, they also want to reduce their cost of purchases. So it's resulting in people specializing in various sort of into small niches, and then thereby succeeding.
Yeah. And I mean, what are the impacts that's driving to? Because as you've got more players, so I'm assuming that the end user consumers have got a bigger choice. I mean, is it driving prices down? Well, what are the impacts for the end user downstream, but also for, let's call it, the parts manufacturers, be it in Europe, be it in Asia, where these wholesaler distributors are importing from?
There is a very, very strong pressure on the downward prices to the end customer, because the end customer no longer is happy to pay the premium for the ability to get his truck or car repaired quickly. Whereas now, because there are so many players in the market, the end customer has the choice. He can literally sit and shop, and then that's thereby that there is a major reduction in cost. In fact, I would say in the last 4 or 5 years, prices to the end customer have not moved more than maybe 2% annually.
Wow, okay. So price pressure is certainly something that's coming down, and again, if you multiply that back up through the chain, then it means someone else can't increase prices. You potentially are reducing profits, which continues to drive it back through to the suppliers.
Yes, and there is another very, very strong trend that is occurring in the commercial segment. So far, it was very strong in the passenger car segment. Choice of repairing, meaning in about say 10 years back or even 15 years back, let's say you bought a car, the distributor had had an authority to insist that you must service your car with a recognized dealer, and only then your warranty was going to be applicable.
Okay.
Now, over a long period of time, there is an association in Australia called Australian Aftermarket Association. It's a AAA. It's called Australian Automotive Aftermarket Association.
Okay.
And a lot of the aftermarket people are members of this. And this lobby group has successfully lobbied with the government to remove this restriction. So now, even if your car is new, you can actually service the car elsewhere and still have your warranty working.
Interesting.
This same is being now carried over to the commercial vehicle market, which is actually quite complicated because what happens in the commercial market is every truck is unique because the truck is oriented to the specific application where the customer wants.
Yeah, yeah.
But there is still a pretty strong hold on the customer of the distributor. And European truck distributors, for example, have a very strong hold on that. However, because of increasing pressures from the aftermarket side, what has happened is there is a major drop in the margins that the truck distributors are able to enjoy on their spare parts and service.
Okay, sorry, carry on, yeah.
What I have now noticed, and even when I was at Meritor and also now that I am consulting independently for various individual companies, I now notice that the truck distributors are increasingly competing with the independent aftermarket. And almost there is a leveling of the playing field now.
Okay, so I mean, just to backtrack and sum it up to one point now, and then we'll go into a little bit into more detail, because you're really looking at some of the major trends in terms of it's easier to import directly.
Yes.
And that's all pretty much motivated by the digitalization and IT technology. You've then got the associations and people lobbying that you can take your warranty to any garage or distributor of your choice. You've then got the added compound of the OEs trying to get into that market because they don't want to lose out. So you've really got a bit of a perfect storm going on there at the moment.
How prepared are you to navigate the disruptive trends that are set to hit your business? Will you survive and win in the coming years? To understand your level of risk exposure and to help you avoid becoming a statistic of failure, take the free risk assessment here, www.dalcorsogroup.com, which will identify the gaps and how to navigate the risks. By taking the risk assessment, you get a chance to win a free 30-minute strategy session with Automotive Growth Expert Roberto Dal Corso. Roberto can help you identify an amount equivalent to 7% of your total annual sales that you are leaving on the table each year. To survive and win, take action now and visit www.dalcorsogroup.com.
Yes, absolutely. There is a major storm going on, and also what is happening on the other end is the bigger players are actually trying to swallow the smaller and the mid-sized players.
Okay.
So it's becoming, there is, on one hand, a lot of small independents are growing, but on the other hand, there is consolidation at the top.
Okay.
So the distributors and the companies are actually becoming bigger and bigger. And one trend that I'm noticing very clearly is bigger companies that had a national presence have now gone public, and because they have gone public, they have access to good funds, and then they acquire businesses. And so over the last 4 or 5 years, there have been now, I would say, 3, maybe 5 multi-billion-dollar automotive groups that have emerged, that are publicly listed, and they hold almost, between them, each of them now owns about 7 to 8 small to medium-sized companies.
Okay, and when you mean medium-sized companies, are they buying other manufacturers' parts distributors, or are they moving down the chain and buying their retail outlets?
It's actually vertical integration, both upwards and downwards.
Okay.
So there is a distribution company. For example, there is a company called Automotive Holdings Group, AHG.
Yes.
They own automotive distributors, automotive dealers. They also have purchased spare parts distributors, and then they have purchased some small manufacturers, small assemblers. So they are now trying to get their hands into the entire integration. So integrating backwards, integrating forwards.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, and then you compound that with pricing issues, and I mean, these groups who are going to buy vertical integration up or down, as you say, are obviously going to be pushing their products as priority through the value chain downstream to the end user. And you got the
Yes.
pricing issues on that. Oh, that is certainly, I mean, something, that any company from Europe, US, outside your market, South America or Africa wanting to come into your market, it makes it a lot more competitive and probably also more complicated, because I'm assuming you've got to be in touch with the right players.
Yes, yes. However, also there have been very recently, not very recently, about 5, 6 years back, some major American chains have bought into Australian businesses, and there used to be a company called Repco, which was a chain of independent aftermarket retail outlets.
Yes.
Now it is owned by GPC Asia Pacific.
Okay.
So which is a division of GPC Global in the US.
Yeah. Wow. So I mean, you've got a lot of consolidation going on there at various levels. So I mean, when you look at it, I mean, some of the mega trends that I've seen, I think, are very consistent with, with exactly what you've said here in terms of, the OE players or the OES channel entering and becoming more aggressive in the IAM. You've got pricing visibility across board. You've got digitalization, and you've got, distributor consolidation going on. So you've really got a lot going on. And I mean, I think what's probably more interesting and even more specific for your market than for some of the others, I mean, Australia is, you mentioned it right at the beginning, is a unique market and a complex market. Do you want to describe and tell us a little bit about why it's unique and complex compared to, let's, for example, say a European, which I think is more standardized, or a US market?
Yes, that's a very good question. In fact, that has been one of the factors that people from the overseas or manufacturers overseas find it difficult to understand. The biggest complexity is that this market is not homogeneous at all, and I will explain to you what I mean by homogeneous. Now, for instance, in Europe, 90% of the vehicle park is Europe manufactured vehicles. You go to US, 90% of the vehicle park is US manufactured vehicles. Same in India, same in China.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, if you take a broad brush approach at the vehicle park, you could say, and I'm just talking of commercial vehicles here because we have been in the commercial vehicles for the last now 10 years. 30% trucks are American origin, 30% of the trucks and buses are of European origin, 40% trucks are of Japanese / Asian origin.
Yeah.
You don't really have and other than that, almost every single manufacturer in the world is present in Australia.
Yeah.
So you can have for example, Steyr of Europe has trucks in Australia, whereas Steyr is a very, very small manufacturer, defense trucks, but you will find them here.
So you've
or
got
Scotch,
yeah.
you find them here.
So you've got all the main brands plus all of the, let's say, more exotic, specialized ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because of that, also, what happens is there is within each, for example, let's take Volvo or let me take Isuzu, for example. Now, Isuzu has trucks across the entire range, right, from a 3.5 gross vehicle mass to up to 27 tons gross vehicle mass.
Yes.
So they have, and then similarly, most of the manufacturers try to get every model into it. So we have 2 of every animals in the zoo that you can find in the world in Australia.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I've always known it's a totally complex market. Reminds me a lot about South Africa when you were describing, the third American, third European, third Asian. Very, very complex. And I mean, and that's where, from what you were describing makes it even more complex because if you're an end user, because now everyone can become a distributor or an end user, you now have the digitalization coming into play, but you've also got the complexity of really good parts manufacturers or vehicle manufacturers that can bring information across in the cataloging, and online information in terms of training can add value to their customer base. But then there are also some suppliers, as we know, that are not at that level yet. So you've got really a mixed bag of of things happening, and difficult to sort out the good from the bad, if I can put it that way.
Yes, and then added to that, the biggest other complexity is the market is tucked far away into the corner of the world. So for aftermarket, the freight costs and the inventory turnover times are extremely long. So, for instance, any order placed on a Europe-based supplier, it's 6 weeks to 8 weeks of shipping time, plus 2 weeks at each end for documentation and packaging,
Yeah.
and plus manufacturer lead time. So if you don't have a part in stock, it's 3 months to 6 months.
Yeah. So that again, that adds pressure on everyone to keep the pricing down and to stock products. And it's okay for the fast moving items, but as you get to the slower ones, it becomes far more complicated to hold those in stock. Wow. No. So that's certainly a major complication that you have because of the position you are. And is Australia still the gateway to get into New Zealand?
To a large extent, yes, but to a large extent, no. Also, because New Zealand has its own complications. There is in many instances, there are different design rules, standards, or different design standards for Australia and New Zealand.
Okay.
Is far more relaxed in terms of the design standards, whereas Australia is a little bit more rigid because in New Zealand the driving conditions and the atmospheric conditions are sort of homogeneous. It's a small country, two islands. They are in sort of a similar, sort of a homogeneous weather-wise, whereas Australia has got tropical forests, Australia has got deserts, and Australia has got the extreme weather. So you've got it's a mixed bag. So to a large extent, yes, it is. Australia is definitely the biggest market.
Yeah.
So people who want to go into New Zealand would like to have a base in Australia, and then so largely similar vehicles.
Okay.
Will be
Largely similar vehicles, but totally different conditions. Because I mean, Australia, you guys have got some of the toughest conditions in the world, where maybe New Zealand's a little bit softer in that respect.
That is true.
Because I mean, I'm just thinking of your massive road trains, and I mean, the people that are going to be listening to us probably have no idea. So maybe you can just describe one of these road trains, because the first time I came across them, it absolutely blew my mind.
Yes, actually, I am conducting a study for, in fact, a client base in Europe in terms of what is the spread. To give an example, the gross train mass of a road train is 120 tons.
Wow.
And you can have, and each state has its own set of driving rules. So for instance, a road train, which means you have a prime mover, which could have a tri-axle at the rear or a twin axle at the rear, can carry can pull 4 trailers in Western Australia, but it is not allowed entry into Victoria.
Okay.
Because of the road dimensions and the turning circle limitations and the width of the roads, etc.
Yes.
Western Australia is so huge that is almost half of Australia's size is Western Australia.
Wow.
And Western Australia would be would actually almost equal to 3 or 4 countries in Europe. So if you add Portugal, Spain, and France, maybe half of France together, that's Western Australia.
Yeah, so you're talking about a big piece of country there.
Big piece of country, and the entire population of the country is 25 million. The population of Western Australia is about 3.5 million, 4 million maybe.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of trying to compare that to Portugal, Spain, and half of France. I think you've got a few more people, so it's very sparsely populated in that respect. So again, servicing and having the right people along the route becomes absolutely critical for the people running these road trains.
Yes, it is. It is very critical, and in fact, these road trains largely run on the northern half of the country, so northwest of Australia and northeast of Australia.
Okay.
Are the two ends where you have road trains.
Yeah.
Northeast is again slightly different because a lot of the cargo movement is off highway. The majority of the population lives on the eastern seaboard. So of the 25 million population in the country, you would say about 4 million in 4.5 million in Perth, about 2 million in the Northern Territory, and the rest of the population is all along the eastern seaboard, along the coastline.
Yeah. No, that I mean, you've got an amazing diversity in country there and in industry, because of course we mustn't forget all the mining and industrial that goes on in Australia, which I think plays a key part even for the commercial vehicle aftermarket, because either you're moving products around or you're actually working, directly involved.
Yes. A lot of the trucking business actually is involved in carrying the iron ore from the mines right up to the port.
Okay. No, I mean, Sanjay, it's certainly interesting hearing about these trends. But one question to you is, now, as these trends take more and more impact, how are distributors, parts manufacturers, what are they doing to navigate this uncertainty? Because the market, as you've explained, in a lot of good detail, it's changing so fast. So how do you stay ahead of the curve?
Information is the king.
Information.
And having access to the accurate information becomes very, very critical. And therefore, what happens is majority of the truck manufacturers or bus manufacturers are very protective of the information that they have. For instance, in Europe, I'm not sure, but maybe you can correct me here, almost every manufacturer is legally required to disclose their parts data to companies like Tech Alliance.
Yeah.
Here in Australia, this thing does not exist. So a lot of the truck distributors and bus manufacturers and truck manufacturers ensure that their vehicle-specific parts information is protected and not available to the general market. However, there are people who have actually found loopholes into them. There are several companies based in Eastern Europe which have actually stolen information from these manufacturers and provide access to these electronic cataloging, and therefore having access to the correct information is most important one, and understanding the customer very, very closely and carefully and partnering with the customer is extremely important. So what's happening is now majority of the truck and bus manufacturers are almost offering a package where it is almost, we can say, buy it, fill fuel, and forget about the rest.
Okay.
So what they do is they give you a leasing option. They will maintain your vehicle for you, and they will buy it back after your 5 years or a 10-year contract period is over. Scania, for example, has started this option of a programmed maintenance. So a truck or a bus is sold to a major fleet organization. So they have a leasing arrangement. It's a 5-year lease, and at the end of 5 years, the truck will be taken back by Scania at an agreed price.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the 5 years, the fleet operator has to commit to maintain the truck with the distributor.
With their spares, so they kind of lock you in over the 5 years, because that's probably
Over the
then
5 years.
yeah, they probably make
But
more money on the spares than they do on the sale of the truck then.
That is true. That is always true. But however, what is happening is because there is cost pressures are on all sides. Majority of the big truck deals, when they come, the manufacturers actually go back to the suppliers of the original equipment and ask for special pricing.
Okay.
I'll give you an example of what happened in Meritor. There is a company in Toll Logistics is an international company. I don't think they have presence in Europe, but they have a big presence in. So Toll had a requirement of 55 Kenworth trucks. And at that point of time, Kenworth actually came and approached Meritor and essentially asked Meritor to drop their price of the axles that they assemble in Sunshine in Australia.
Yeah.
Drop it by 3, maybe 5% down to be able to get the contract. If Meritor did not come to the party, they would go to Dana for supplying the axle. So then Meritor simply had to say, fine, we will give you, but we want this business. Because it was 55 axle sets.
Yes.
It's not a small chunk of the business. So that's how. So now what manufacturers are doing is they are going back to the original equipment manufacturers. The truck manufacturers are saying that, okay, Mr. Meritor, Mr. Cummins, or Mr. Dana, you are going to manufacture. We are buying these from you. You have to drop your prices by 2 or 3% because we have to offer these special prices to this big truck business.
Yeah.
And then when they offer this business, then they also offer them a program maintenance contract, so for 5 years, and then afterwards they try and buy the truck back, or the truck is then sold on to a second user, or a third, or a second owner, or a third owner, or something, and that's how. So it is quite tough, and companies are struggling. A lot of places, businesses are actually laying off staff because they can't handle the profitability is not there anymore. The businesses are shrinking.
Yeah. Okay. No, that I didn't realize that. And I mean, you're dealing with a lot of the leaders within the industry at distribution level, parts manufacturers. Is there any change in leadership style, or how are they trying to, again, you mentioned information as the way forward, but how is leadership or management trying to navigate internally and externally? Because I mean, they've got to drive their people. You mentioned the costs down internally. They're trying to maintain or even increase sales and profit. So how do they manage? Is there any changes from that you're seeing in the market on the leadership side?
Yes, there is a pretty major change, I would say. The leadership is now increasingly becoming more and more inclusive. Because companies cannot offer financial rewards, there are other rewards such as training programs or overseas visits or smaller things like maybe a dinner for two or small incentives.
Yeah.
Or they offer now home friendly hours, meaning they can flexi working hours. So there is a core time at which the employees have to be at work. Let's say from 9 to 3.
Okay.
And then people who have younger children to be picked up or dropped from school, they can come early and leave early, or they can come late and leave late. So there's a lot of flexibility provided. The people have started offering paid maternity leave for women employees. So there is certain amount of flexibility in this, more inclusiveness and more. The reward is more now recognition rather than remuneration.
Okay, so a lot more employee engagement in that perspective then.
Engagement,
Okay, no, that is really really interesting, and I know it's getting late, so we'll try and keep it down to the last few questions for you. But when you take a look at it, I mean, if you look at the parts manufacturers, parts distributors in their daily business, what would you say are their one or two biggest issues or biggest frustrations that they have day to day?
There would be quite a lot. I suppose high inventory costs and the fear of being left with dead inventory is the major issue, one. And second thing, because downtime in this country is extremely expensive in terms of, I would say Australia is amongst the most expensive labor cost economies. So for instance, a mechanic will cost you a minimum of 70 to $100
Okay,
per hour.
that is expensive.
So downtime is very high. So what happens is, if you do not have the parts that a customer wants at when he wants it, you lose the business.
Oh wow. Okay.
Customer has a choice.
Yeah.
So on one hand, you don't want to hold too much inventory. On the other hand, if you don't hold too much inventory, you don't have the part the customer wants.
Yeah.
So it is a constant struggle of keeping up with the times and keeping up. So employee engagement, customer engagement,
Okay.
supplier engagement.
Supplier engagement.
So
Yeah.
if you are able to tie all these three things together, that's the result for success. So a lot of companies are now paying a lot of focus on CRM,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of emphasis on e-commerce,
Yeah.
and a lot of emphasis on e-marketing, making sure the customer is kept advised on the new things that are happening. Customers also are asked as to what are their plans. So it's a constant. So unless the customer and the supplier are engaged, companies simply find it difficult to remain in business.
Yeah. So I mean, if I understood correctly, so it's the customer engagement. There's a big shift also towards online retail, if I can put it that way.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
In fact, now there is a lot of spare parts companies are moving over to electronic ordering. So
Yeah.
earlier there used to be a concept of a customer comes in or makes a phone call, and then you go and look for the parts, and then but for customers that are engaged quite well, and there is a known a known part requirement, so the customers then have straight an electronic ordering facility.
yeah.
That is one.
Okay.
And a lot of automotive spare parts distributors, depending upon their size, they now keep consignment stocks at the customer's premises.
Okay, to help them overcome the stock issues and monetary issues.
Work on the stock issues, yes.
Yeah.
But that again depends on the size of the customer.
Of course.
So if you are a very big fleet, if you are a bus fleet of 600 buses, you will have a consignment stock of X million dollars with you.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I know you're an expert, in also marketing. You started life as product marketing and business development. You've launched numerous ranges. Are there any issues that you see around that area in terms of launching successfully launching new products into the marketplace?
The biggest challenge is grabbing the customer's attention.
Yeah.
Because you may have a fantastic product that the customer wants, but the customer's attention is now so short. The attention span has dropped. There is a large number of competitors in the market, and the customer doesn't need or does not have the desire to spend time understanding your new offering or understanding how he will benefit by adopting your new product or new offering. And that is where, in my opinion, majority of the new product launches fail, because yes, you might have done adequate research, you might have understood and found out a need that needs to be fulfilled, and then you have, but unless you have been able to communicate with the customer, identify, or rather I would say even go and poke the pain point that the customer does not know he has,
Yes.
you don't succeed.
Oh, that's interesting. I love it. I love it. You're giving it so much valuable information. You know, I guess we're coming towards the end, and you know, one big major takeaway, if you had to say, look, you know, guys, the most important thing that you can think of, what would it be? You know, going forward into the future, this is absolutely critical, key to know.
Electronic cataloging and basically information management.
Information
Is
management.
extremely critical. Whoever has access to the correct information of the supplier, of the customer, and of the market.
Yeah.
So if you're able to control this information, you can survive. If you're not able to control the information, you had it.
No, it's an awesome tip for everyone who's going to, you know, join us later on the summit and get the information out. It's a fantastic tip. So I can only say thank you for that. And I mean, if we just diverge one or two quick questions on outside of business. I mean, I know you mentioned, you know, your origins are in India. So what are your passions outside of business? What on your personal life? What are your passions?
I like gardening. I have a pretty good backyard, lots of fruit trees, and I like bit of traveling, but I have not had much time to do that. But I like to travel a lot. In fact, I haven't visited too many places in India, which I would like to do.
Okay.
And that's a good and upcoming market. So yeah, like to travel, like to and of course watch a lot of movies, a lot of Netflix.
And I mean, right at the beginning, you mentioned, you know, you're passionate about gardening and growing fruits. And what fruit and what gardening do you do? What fruit do you have in your garden?
I have about 7, 8 trees. I've got an apple tree, I've got a guava tree, I've got lemons, I've got mandarins, I've got peach, I've got apricots.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of flowering plants as well.
Ah, that is awesome. That is awesome. I mean, I really did not know that about you. It's good to know. Maybe you should start some export business on the fruit side.
No, it's a tough thing because a lot of my all fruit trees are actually attracting birds, and I was a couple of hours back I took out my apple tree has been completely attacked by birds, and I can't get to eat apples myself. It's all my trees are feeding all the wildlife here.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear about that. And do you have any plans in the coming months to come over to Europe?
Not as such, but I'm thinking I should. In fact, this year you have Automechanica, is it?
Yes, Automechanica is on, absolutely.
Yeah, I haven't made plans yet, but I might come in by myself because the way I'm operating now, I'm actually consulting for a couple of companies, and also basically my strength is information management, and this is where I'm helping out one customer, but at the same time I'm also looking to see if I can tie up with some suppliers in Europe and India and to sort of directly import some parts, because knowing the market and knowing what to get and when,
yes,
has been the success or mantra of success of a couple of competitors that I've seen, and I would like to follow that example and be one myself.
Okay, and I mean, you know, it's good that you mentioned it, because last year you set up your own business, your own consultancy, and how's that going?
It's going all right. Right now, I'm consulting for small, I can say medium-sized parts retailer who specialize in European truck and bus parts.
Okay.
And I am also providing some information management for a cataloging company. And I'm trying to have some tie-up with one supplier in India, which I'm going to meet first week of April. I'm going to India to have a quick business meeting with them. So
Excellent.
let's see if they can, and plus I'll see if I can sort of get in touch base with all my supplier contacts that I had in the past.
Yes.
And sort of see if I could sort of represent them here, or sort of get them to meet, because as I said, the value chain is shrinking.
Yes.
So let's cut the middleman out.
No, absolutely.
I can just meet. I can be the meeting point for the supplier, manufacturer overseas to the end customers here, and I just get a small cut in the process.
Yeah, no, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. And Sanjay, all I can say is absolutely thank you so much for giving up your time. Thank you for sharing information. I know it's getting late on your Friday night and your weekend has started, so I can only say absolutely thank you.
My pleasure, Robbie. Anytime. Thank you.
I hope that you have enjoyed and found value in watching this interview. If you want to learn more about the leading disruptive automotive trends impacting the industry, check out www.dalcorsogroup.com. I encourage you to share it with colleagues that will appreciate great industry insights. Join us tomorrow for more experts from around the world.